Harper Lewis had just turned 32 last fall. She lived in a cozy townhouse tucked into the quieter part of Portland, Oregon, where trees line the streets like old friends keeping secrets. She worked as a senior designer at a mid-sized marketing agency, the kind of job that offered steady hours and a comfortable life, if not much excitement. Harper didn't crave much else. Or at least, she hadn't until now. She had been married to Elijah for 6 years. They had met in college. She was the quiet art student with ink-stained fingers. He was the magnetic engineering major who lit up any room. They had fallen hard and fast. For a long time, their life together felt easy, like slipping into warm sheets on a cold day. But lately something had changed. Not abruptly, not loud or obvious. Just small shifts, like a painting that no longer sat quite straight on the wall. The morning began as most did. Harper brewed her usual coffee, black with a splash of oat milk, while Elijah lingered in the hallway, answering a call with hushed tones and a strange smile in his voice. She noticed it, stored it away. He kissed her cheek absently before heading out the door, keys jingling in his hand like an afterthought. When she returned to their bedroom to gather laundry, his phone lit up on the dresser. He never left it unattended anymore. But this morning, it was there, screen glowing innocently with a message preview. Last night was worth every risk.
Can't stop thinking about you.
X. The name was unfamiliar. Harper froze. The laundry in her hands slipped quietly to the floor. Her heart didn't race. It dropped deep and cold like a stone in water. She stood there for what felt like hours, though it was probably seconds, her gaze fixed on that glowing screen. Then the phone went dark again, as if nothing had happened. She didn't scream,
Didn't cry.
She simply walked to the bathroom and stared at her reflection. Her face was calm, controlled, but inside, something had cracked. Not broken entirely, just enough for light to spill through and show everything she hadn't wanted to see before. There had been signs. The way Elijah started turning his phone face down whenever he set it on a surface. The new password is on his laptop. His sudden, newfound need for solo evening runs, always returning a little later than he promised. The colder tone in his voice when he said goodnight. None of it had screamed betrayal, but now all those puzzle pieces clicked into place with a bitter kind of clarity. Still, Harper didn't act. Not yet. She knew herself too well. She knew the damage a confrontation could cause, especially if it came from a place of pain instead of proof. And she didn't want to cry in front of him. She didn't want him to see her broken.
So she went about her day.
She folded laundry, answered emails, and smiled at coworkers during Zoom meetings. She made dinner like she always did, and listened to Elijah talk about work like nothing had changed. But all the while she was taking notes, watching, waiting. A quiet war was beginning behind her calm eyes. She didn't know where the story would lead, but she knew it had started. Thursday nights were always Elijah's to himself. He called it his reset time, usually spent at the gym or grabbing drinks with coworkers. Harper never questioned it until now. That night, as he left with his gym bag slung over one shoulder and a too-casual goodbye, she waited exactly 10 minutes. Then she opened the drawer by the bed, the one where he sometimes forgot things in his rush. His iPad was there. She hadn't seen it in weeks. He had once synced it with his phone. Maybe he still had. Heart pounding, Harper powered it on. She didn't even know what she expected. Denial, maybe. But it only took seconds for the truth to spill out in full color. There they were. Dozens of messages. Some casual, some intimate. Some are completely unrepeatable. The woman's name was Claire Donovan. The words stabbed more than the content because of the familiarity. The way Elijah wrote to Claire was with a softness he hadn't used with Harper in years. He sent her songs he used to share with Harper. He told Claire about his bad days. He called her home. Harper scrolled, breath shallow, until one message made her pause. Can't believe we pulled that off in the guest bathroom. Tyler didn't suspect a thing.
Tyler.
That name stuck. She closed the iPad, numb, and sat silently on the edge of the bed. The pieces arranged themselves faster now. Claire wasn't just some secret girlfriend. She was someone else's wife. Claire Donovan. Married to Tyler Donovan. Harper reached for her laptop with trembling hands and typed the name into a search bar. It wasn't hard. Tyler Donovan's professional profile came up immediately. Financial advisor. Portland-based.
Married.
A public photo showed him smiling next to Claire at a charity gala last year. Harper stared at the photo for a long time. Not because she was surprised, but because she wasn't. Claire looked just like Harper had imagined, pretty, well put together, the kind of woman who always knew how to end a conversation first. That night, Harper didn't sleep. She lay awake in bed, next to the same man who had once sworn he'd never lie to her. The ceiling above her felt too low, like the walls were folding in. At 3:42 a.m., she got up and opened her laptop again. The email she wrote to Tyler was careful. No rage, no accusations. Just facts. She introduced herself briefly, explained what she had seen, and included a few screenshots. And then she ended with a single line. I thought you deserved to know. She didn't expect a reply right away. She didn't even expect him to believe her. But by noon the next day, she had a new email. Thank you for telling me. Can we talk? The first phone call was quiet at first. Tyler's voice was calm, composed, but heavy with something Harper recognized, grief trying to wear the mask of anger. They compared timelines, notes, messages. There were gaps, yes, but also overlaps. Tyler had suspected something for months, but hadn't known who or how. Harper filled in the pieces he didn't have, and he did the same for her. I keep wondering if this means it was all fake, Harper said at one point, not realizing she'd said it aloud. Tyler was silent for a long time. Then he replied, I think it means it wasn't enough for them. That's different from fake. The words hit her somewhere deep, but she didn't cry. Not yet. When they ended the call, it wasn't awkward. It was strange, really, how comfortable it felt to speak with someone else inside the same wreckage. Neither of them said what came next. They weren't there yet. But the truth was no longer a shadow. It was real, solid,
Shared.
and now it had to be faced. The cafe Harper chose was small and unassuming, tucked between a bookstore and a florist on the quieter end of Hawthorne. The kind of place where people nurse their coffee and never ask questions. She arrived 10 minutes early and sat near the window, hands wrapped tightly around a mug that had long since stopped steaming. Tyler arrived right on time. He was taller than she expected, dressed simply, his face drawn but polite. He scanned the cafe briefly, then spotted her. Their eyes met, and for a moment neither of them moved. Then he walked over, and they exchanged a quiet, almost cautious hello. It didn't feel like meeting a stranger. It felt like seeing someone who'd survived the same storm.
They didn't waste time.
Harper pulled out a manila envelope and slid it across the table. Tyler did the same. Inside were screenshots, dates, and travel receipts. The puzzle had been mostly completed already, but now they had the border pieces. Now they had everything. There were no outbursts, no public displays of heartbreak. Just silence. And then small questions. Did he ever mention a weekend in Seattle? Harper asked, almost rhetorically. He told me it was a work seminar, Tyler replied. They both gave small, bitter laughs. Not from humor. From recognition. She noticed how still his hands were, how tired his eyes looked. She felt the same exhaustion in her bones, like months of tension had suddenly collapsed into one long exhale. They sat there for nearly an hour, talking softly, exchanging notes like detectives instead of people whose lives had just been cracked open. When the conversation naturally paused, Tyler leaned forward slightly and said, There's something else. Claire told me she was spending next weekend at her sister's cabin. Harper raised an eyebrow. Elijah told me he booked a guy's trip to the coast. Tyler nodded. It's the same weekend. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Harper said, We could go there. The cabin. Not to make a scene. Just to make sure they see us. Together. Not revenge, Tyler said carefully. No, Harper replied. Clarity. The plan came together quickly after that. Tyler had the address. He'd driven Claire there once before. Harper offered to drive. They didn't overthink it. They just needed to be there. to take control of the narrative that had been written behind their backs for far too long. Before they parted, Tyler looked at her and asked, "Are you sure you want to do this?" Harper thought for a moment. She wasn't driven by anger anymore. Not even heartbreak. Just the need to be free of shadows. "I want them to see us," she said. "I want them to realize that we're not broken." Tyler nodded once. "Okay, then let's do it." They left the cafe quietly, walking back into a city that kept spinning like nothing had changed. But for Harper, everything had. She had found an unexpected ally. Someone who knew exactly what betrayal felt like. And now, together, they were stepping toward something they hadn't had in a long time. The truth. On their terms. The cabin sat at the edge of a pine-covered ridge, just far enough from the main road to feel removed from reality. It was quiet there, too quiet for what Harper and Tyler had planned. They arrived before noon, the gravel driveway crunching beneath the tires as they pulled up beside the small two-story house. The air smelled of cedar and distant rain. Harper stepped out first, clutching a small bag of essentials, printed messages, copies of emails, and her resolve. Tyler followed, carrying a folded blanket under one arm and a small cooler with wine and glasses in the other. It wasn't about making a scene. It was about setting the stage for the truth. Inside, the cabin was exactly as she'd imagined it, rustic, with mismatched furniture and old family photos on the walls. Tyler moved through it with quiet familiarity, guiding her to the living room where wide windows opened to a view of the trees. They chose that room deliberately. They placed 2 chairs in the middle of the space, side by side, facing the front door. Between them, a small coffee table with 2 wine glasses half filled. Harper laid out the printed screenshots in a neat pile, weighed down with a smooth stone taken from outside. Evidence, but not thrown like a weapon. Just present. Waiting. Tyler adjusted the lamp so the lighting was soft but direct. "We don't need to say much," he said, looking around. "They'll understand everything the second they walk in." Harper nodded. "It's not about yelling. It's about letting them see what they broke." They stepped outside afterward, sitting on the porch steps, wrapped in jackets against the wind. For the first time since they'd begun this strange alliance, there was no strategy to discuss.
Just space to feel.
Tyler spoke first. "I never thought I'd be the kind of person who'd get cheated on. Isn't that ridiculous?" Harper gave a small smile. "I used to think love could fix anything. If it wasn't working, it meant I wasn't trying hard enough." They sat in silence for a while, letting the wind carry away what they couldn't say. "Do you still love him?" Tyler asked suddenly, without looking at her. She didn't answer right away. "I don't know. I loved the version of him that loved me. I think she's the only one he talks to now." He nodded slowly, then asked, "What do you want from today?" Harper considered that. Not revenge. Not closure, exactly. But something close to it. "I want to walk away knowing I didn't stay silent. That I didn't let it end in shadows." "That's enough," Tyler said. "That's honest." They went back inside just before sunset. Everything was in place. The room looked warm, inviting. Ordinary, except for the weight of what waited inside it. Harper looked at the scene they'd created and felt a strange sense of calm. Not peace, not yet, but readiness. They didn't hide. They didn't run. They sat in the chairs they had arranged, side by side, and waited. Not just for Claire and Elijah to arrive, but for the moment their silence would finally end. The sound of tires on gravel broke the quiet like a warning bell. Harper sat upright in her chair, heart pounding but face composed. Beside her, Tyler didn't move. His fingers were locked tightly around the stem of his wine glass, eyes fixed on the front door. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The air inside the cabin had shifted. It was time. The door opened. Elijah stepped in first, laughing at something Claire was saying behind him. His voice faltered the instant he saw them. He froze in the doorway, keys in one hand, his face suddenly colorless. Claire stepped in a beat later, stopping so abruptly that her purse slipped from her shoulder and thudded softly onto the floor. No one spoke for a long, excruciating moment. Then Harper stood, slow and steady. "Welcome," she said simply, her voice quiet but sharp enough to cut glass. What the hell is this? Elijah's voice was a low panic, already laced with defensiveness. Why are you here? How did you? We know, Tyler interrupted, standing now, too. He didn't raise his voice, but it echoed louder than any shout. Everything. Claire's hand instinctively moved to her stomach, then quickly dropped. Her lips parted, but no words came. Harper stepped closer, eyes fixed on Elijah. We wanted you to see what the truth looks like. Without lies. Without locked phones. Without excuses. Elijah blinked rapidly, glancing between Harper and Tyler. This is crazy. You followed us? You're spying on us? No, Harper said. We stopped ignoring what was already in front of us. She walked back to the coffee table, picked up the stack of messages, and held them out. This is just a copy, in case either of you tries to pretend we imagined it. Claire looked at the papers and then away, jaw clenched. You don't have to read them, Tyler added. You wrote most of it. The silence grew heavier, thick with the weight of what was being exposed. Elijah rubbed his face with both hands, as if trying to physically wipe the moment away. I didn't mean for it to happen, he muttered, avoiding Harper's eyes. It wasn't planned. That's your defense? She asked. That it was an accident. You lied to me for months? Claire finally spoke, voice shaking but steady enough. We didn't want to hurt you. But you did, Tyler snapped. You both did. Repeatedly. The dam broke after that. Harper's voice, usually soft and measured, cracked with fury. You used my trust like a shield while sneaking off with her. You made me think I was crazy when I asked questions. Elijah tried to step toward her, but she stepped back.
No. Don't touch me.
Don't speak like we're still the same people. You changed too, he said quietly. You stopped seeing me. She let out a bitter laugh. I didn't stop seeing you, Elijah. I just stopped seeing someone who wanted to stay. Tyler turned to Claire now. You told me you were working late. You told me you needed space. And all the while, you were here with him. Claire's face was pale, lips were trembling. I know what I did. And it wasn't just about him. Tyler blinked. What does that mean? I didn't tell you everything, she said. And I don't want to lie anymore. Harper and Tyler both looked at her now. Claire's hands were trembling. I'm pregnant, she said. The words hung in the air like smoke, heavy and choking. Tyler took a step back. What? I found out 2 weeks ago, she said, voice cracking. I wasn't sure how to tell you, but it's yours. Harper turned sharply to look at Elijah, whose expression had twisted into something unreadable. Tyler's voice was low, shaking. You're sure? Yes, Claire whispered. We hadn't, Elijah and we stopped. A while ago. That twist hit Harper like a slap. Elijah's had dropped. The illusion had crumbled completely now. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was humiliation. Finality. I didn't want this to happen like this, Claire said. But it's the truth. Tyler stood completely still, eyes red with a kind of quiet devastation Harper recognized in her bones. You were going to keep this from me. I was scared, Claire said. You've barely looked at me for months. Because I knew something was wrong, he snapped. I just didn't want to admit it. There was no shouting after that. Just silence and the soft ticking of a nearby clock. No one sat. No one cried. They all stood there. For people in a room that had once promised escape and now held nothing but consequence. Elijah looked at Harper, his voice hollow. I never wanted to lose you. You already did, she replied. Tyler turned to Harper then. We don't need to stay here. No, she said. We've seen what we came to see. Harper looked at Claire, then at Elijah one last time. I hope you both think about what this costs. Not just what you gained. Without another word, she and Tyler turned and walked out. The air outside was cold, but clean. The sky had darkened, but she breathed easier than she had in weeks. They said nothing as they drove away. There was nothing more to say for now. The truth had been revealed. The damage had been named. And from here on, the story would no longer be written behind closed doors. The car ride home was silent, but it wasn't the silence of avoidance. It was the kind that followed aftershocks, the quiet hum of everything broken finally settling. Harper stared out the window, the trees blurring past, her reflection faint against the glass. In her chest, emotions churned without shape: grief, relief, exhaustion. But through it all, one thing stood firm. She was done. Claire's words echoed again and again. "I'm pregnant. It's yours." And the moment Tyler had stepped back, stunned into stillness. Harper had felt it, how quickly the chaos had deepened. But what surprised her wasn't the pregnancy. It was the way her heart didn't crack open at the news. It didn't break, because it had already closed. They pulled into her driveway just after dark. Tyler killed the engine, but didn't move. Neither did she. "I still can't believe it," he said finally, voice low. "She told me she wanted to start a family last year. I said I wasn't ready. Guess she found another way." Harper turned to him, quietly. "Do you believe her? That's yours." Tyler nodded slowly.
Yeah.
"We may have been unraveling, but it still happened. I don't want to run from that." Harper respected the honesty. "You're a good man," she said. He gave a small, humorless smile. "Feels like a funny time to hear that." Inside, Harper moved through her home like a stranger in her own life. The couch still had Elijah's throw blanket draped over the back. A pair of his shoes waited near the door. But the presence of him no longer pulled at her. It simply filled space. She went to her study and opened the drawer that had been locked for 2 weeks. Inside was a manila envelope. The divorce papers were already signed. Her lawyer had drawn them up the day after Tyler's first call. Harper had waited to be sure. But now, there was nothing left to doubt. She texted Elijah. "Come by tomorrow. I have something for you." He showed up the next morning, looking worn and unsure, hands deep in the pockets of his jacket. Harper didn't offer coffee. She didn't ask how he was. She handed him the envelope and watched the confusion flicker across his face before realization took over. "You already did this?" he asked, voice caught between disbelief and something like regret. "I didn't need to wait for permission," she said. He sat down heavily on the arm of the couch. "Harper, I know I ruined everything. But I never expected it to end like this." "That's because you thought I'd stay," she replied, level. "You thought I'd cry, forgive, beg for pieces of you. I won't." He opened the envelope and scanned the documents. There was a kind of finality in the sound of paper moving between his fingers. "I can't fix this," he said finally, almost to himself. "I don't want you to," Harper said. "I just want it done." She didn't cry. She didn't scream. Her peace didn't come from revenge. It came from the release. That night, after Elijah left with the envelope in hand, she called Tyler. "How are you?" she asked. "Still breathing," he said. "Still sorting through it all." "You'll be a good father," she told him. His silence was full of surprise, then emotion. "Thank you. That means more than I can say." They didn't make plans to meet again. There was no need. They had found each other when the walls collapsed, and now it was time to rebuild, separately, but with truth as the foundation. As Harper lay in bed that night, she felt the weight of the past months fall away like dust. Her marriage was over. Her trust had been torn. But her sense of self, long buried beneath compromise and quiet doubts, had finally come back to life. This was the end. But it was also the beginning. The ferry ride into Port Townsend felt like crossing into another life. Harper stood on the deck, wind tugging at her hair, eyes fixed on the sleepy shoreline drawing closer. The water shimmered beneath the soft morning sun, and for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel like she was running away. She was arriving. 3 months had passed since she left Elijah for good. The divorce had been finalized with little resistance, just quiet signatures and unopened conversations. She didn't attend the hearing. Her lawyer had handled everything. There was nothing left to say. The house was sold, the furniture split, and the past tucked neatly into a box she never planned to open again. Port Townsend had always whispered to her in quiet daydreams, but she'd never truly listened until now. It was smaller, slower, laced with charm, Bookstores with creaky floors, cafes where strangers still greeted each other by name. She found a rental near the water, a two-bedroom cottage with ivy on the windows and silence in the walls. It felt like permission to breathe. She had left her job behind, too. The marketing agency life that once felt steady had turned brittle in the aftermath. Instead, she began freelancing, branding work for small businesses, passion projects that felt less like labor and more like expression. Some days she worked from a local co-op, others from her porch, laptop balanced beside her tea. The rhythm was her own now, soft and steady. Healing wasn't loud. It didn't come in sudden waves or dramatic revelations. It was quiet, like waking up one day and realizing the pain no longer sat at the center of everything. There were still hard mornings, still questions, but they no longer haunted her. They just passed through like the weather. She and Tyler kept in touch. Occasionally, he'd send her a photo of the nursery he was putting together. Once, she mailed him a copy of a book she thought he'd like, On Grief and Gratefulness, with a note inside, "We're still standing." That counts. Their friendship had become something steady and rare. Not bound by need, just mutual understanding. No promises. No blurred lines. Just two people who had seen each other at their lowest and chosen to hold space for the aftermath. Tyler's life was changing fast. Claire had decided to co-parent, and while they remained separated, they were committed to giving the baby a stable start. Harper respected him for that. He didn't run from the wreckage. He chose to build something new in its place. As for Harper, she no longer checked Elijah's social media or wondered what he was doing. Some nights, she remembered the good years with a soft ache, but she never wished to return to them. Love, she had learned, isn't enough without honesty. Trust, once shattered, doesn't grow back the same way. But something else did grow. She began journaling again, painting in the quiet corners of her afternoons.
She took long walks by the sea.
She smiled more, genuine, full smiles that came without warning. The woman in the mirror started to look familiar again. One evening, as the sky turned orange over the Sound, Harper stood barefoot in her kitchen, music playing low, a wine glass half full. She caught her reflection in the window, peaceful, grounded, changed. What she'd lost no longer defined her. What she'd endured no longer held her captive. In its place was something simple but powerful, clarity. She had found herself not despite the pain, but because of it. And now she was finally home,